They scripted my downfall. I let them perform it on themselves.
The tactical knife was the first thing I noticed when I came home early that Tuesday. Beth had left it right there on her nightstand like it belonged. The handle was matte black, military grade, with initials engraved. CG, my initials are CB. Colin Barrett. The knife wasn't mine. I stood in our bedroom doorway, dust from the demolished warehouse still clinging to my work clothes. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never seen that blade before. Beth was downstairs making dinner, humming something I didn't recognize. I picked up the knife. Military issue, expensive. The kind of tool you carry when you expect trouble. "Honey?" Beth called from the kitchen. "How was the site inspection?" I set the knife back exactly where I'd found it. "Fine," I called back. But I wasn't fine, and neither was she. I'm a structural engineer who specializes in disaster assessment. When buildings collapse or get blown apart, insurance companies send me to figure out why. The job suits me. I understand how things break. Beth used to joke that I was too analytical. These days, she didn't joke much. "You're losing your edge, Colin," she'd say, stirring her wine. "You used to be decisive, aggressive. Now you just drift." The warning sign started small. Phone calls that ended when I walked in, new clothes I hadn't seen her buy. The name Clay started appearing in her explanations with increasing regularity. Her coworker, key partner on demanding projects requiring brutal overtime. That night, after Beth fell asleep, I used old military contacts to run the initials. Clay Gorman, 35, former private military contractor, discharged under administrative circumstances, currently listed as a security consultant. I started noticing things I'd missed. My coffee mug, ceramic piece my unit gave me, was missing. Beth claimed she'd broken it, but I found it in the garage trash, intact, wrapped in newspaper like someone was trying to hide it. My old tactical gear bag, stored in the basement, had been moved. Subtle shift, maybe 6 inches from where I'd left it. But I remember positions. It's how you stay alive when buildings want to fall on you. The spare key under the porch planter was gone. Beth said she'd moved it for security reasons, but couldn't remember where. I started leaving indicators. Books positioned at specific angles, coins placed in exact spots, hair strands across doorways. Every day, at least 3 had been disturbed. Someone was going through our house when I wasn't there. Someone careful, but not careful enough. On Thursday, I came home to find our dog, Rex, refusing to go upstairs. He'd sit at the bottom step, whimpering, fur standing up along his spine. Dogs don't lie. They smell things humans miss. Friday evening, Beth announced she'd be working late again, and left wearing a black dress I'd never seen. I waited an hour, then drove to her office building. Empty parking lot. Beth's Lexus was nowhere in sight. Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. "Staying at Amy's tonight? Girl talk and wine." Amy was Beth's college roommate who lived 3 states away. They hadn't spoken in years. A friend traced the number. The message came from a burner device purchased with cash downtown. That evening, I drove past Gorman Security Solutions, a converted warehouse in the industrial district. 3 cars in the lot, black pickup, motorcycle, and Beth's Lexus. Through the office windows, I could see silhouettes moving around. 2 figures, close together, very close. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:47 p.m., they came out together. Clay Gorman looked even more dangerous in person. Military bearing, coiled tension, the way he scanned the parking lot before unlocking his truck. Beth walked beside him like they'd done this before. Many times before. They stood talking for 10 minutes. I couldn't hear the words, but I watched the body language. His hand on her lower back, her fingers touching his arm, the way she tilted her head when he spoke. This wasn't business. This was intimate. Clay kissed her, not passionate, but possessive, claiming territory. Then they got into separate vehicles and drove in opposite directions. Beth headed home. Clay went deeper into the industrial district. I followed Clay. He parked outside a converted apartment complex that used to house factory workers. Rough neighborhood, the kind where people minded their own business and security cameras got broken regularly. Perfect place for someone who valued privacy. I memorized the address, then headed home to wait for my wife. Beth slipped into bed at 1:15 a.m., smelling like unfamiliar cologne and cigarettes. "How was Amy?" I asked quietly. She stiffened. "Good. We talked about old times. You smell like smoke." "Amy's boyfriend smokes. I guess it stuck." Another lie. Amy was married. Sunday morning, while Beth showered, I checked her car. Fast food wrapper, timestamp from yesterday evening. Gas receipt from near Clay's apartment. In the glove compartment. Business card for Gorman Security Solutions with handwriting. Phase 2, ready, awaiting authorization. I photographed everything. That afternoon, I made a decision. I was going to find out what Phase 2 inches meant, and when I did, I was going to turn their plan against them. Monday morning, I started playing a different game. Instead of confronting Beth, I began acting confused. Like a man slowly losing his grip. "Honey," I said over breakfast, "did you move my keys? Found them in the refrigerator this morning." Beth looked up sharply. "No, why would I move your keys?" I frowned, patted my pockets. Must be losing my mind. I hadn't lost my keys. I'd put them there myself while Beth was watching. For 3 days, I continued the performance, forgot conversations, asked questions twice, left lights on. The kind of pattern suggesting mental deterioration. Beth started watching me differently, clinically, like she was documenting my decline. Wednesday evening, she suggested I take a break from work. "You're pushing yourself too hard, Colin. Can't afford time off. The Morrison Building collapse report is due Friday." I stared at her, letting my expression shift to something darker. "They're depending on me. If I screw this up, people lose money, lots of money." "I said they're depending on me." I snapped, loud enough to make her flinch. Then I caught myself, looked horrified. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm sorry, Beth." She touched my hand. "It's okay, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not yourself lately." Thursday evening, I was in my office when I heard the back door open. Beth wasn't supposed to be home for hours. I listened. Footsteps, heavier, male. "It's upstairs in his office," Beth was saying. "He never comes down when he's working." "How long do we have?" Deep voice. "Clay Gorman. At least an hour." From the stairs, I could see into the living room. Beth and Clay stood near our fireplace, examining something on Clay's phone. "The audio quality is excellent," Clay said, "especially the part where he screams about the deadline. Very convincing." Beth laughed. Cold, calculating. "He's been losing it for weeks. Yesterday, he put his wallet in the freezer." "Perfect. How are you feeling about the timeline?" "Ready. This marriage has been dead for years, Clay. I just needed the right exit strategy." Clay's hand moved to her back. "And the house? Joint ownership, but I've been paying majority of the mortgage." With his mental state documented, plus incident reports, I should get everything. "Incident reports?" Beth's smile was vicious. "The recording equipment you installed is working perfectly. Every time he raises his voice, every confused ramble, it's all documented. His behavioral pattern will destroy him in court." My blood turned to ice. They'd been building a case, recording me, manipulating situations to make me look mentally unstable. What about work? His supervisor already thinks he's burning out. I've been feeding his secretary information about his home stress for weeks. And if he fights the divorce? He won't. Poor Colin, suffering from post-military trauma and work breakdown. The courts will see him as a victim who needs help, not a husband who deserves assets. I recorded every word, hands shaking with rage. Friday morning, I made 3 calls. First to my lawyer, requesting emergency meeting. Second, to a private investigator. Third, to my former commanding officer. Background check on Clay Gorman, everything. Monday, the results exceeded expectations. Clay wasn't just former military. He'd been discharged for embezzlement, spent 18 months in military prison. His security firm was a shell company. Most interesting, his specialty was marital asset recovery. Clay made his living helping wealthy women divorce their husbands by manufacturing evidence of mental instability. Beth wasn't his girlfriend. She was his client. Tuesday evening, I decided to make contact. I was working in my garage when Clay appeared in the doorway. No announcement, no warning. One moment I was alone. The next he was there, silent, watching, assessing. "Colin Barrett?" he said. I looked up from my workbench, trying to appear startled. "Yeah, do I know you?" "Clay Gorman. I work with your wife." He stepped into the garage without invitation, moving like a predator. Everything about him screamed danger. The way he positioned himself between me and the exit. The slight bulge under his jacket that suggested a concealed tool, calm in his eyes. "Beth's mentioned you," I said carefully. "Security consulting, right?" "Something like that." Clay picked up a wrench from my workbench, tested its weight. "Nice setup you have here. Very organized, military training. 8 years, Army engineers? Explosive ordnance disposal? I nodded. Clay smiled, thin, predatory. Dangerous work, high stress, I imagine it leaves marks on a man's mind. The threat was subtle but clear. He wasn't just talking about my military service. He was evaluating my psychological profile, looking for pressure points. Some days are harder than others, I admitted. I'm sure they are. Clay set the wrench down, precisely where he'd found it. Beth doesn't feel safe with you anymore. I'm just here to make sure she stays safe. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Clay was marking territory, establishing dominance, testing my reaction. I forced my shoulders to slump. I don't understand. Your behavior lately, the confusion, the anger, the unpredictability, it's frightening for her. I haven't hurt her. I would never. Intent doesn't matter, Colin. Impact does. And the impact of your deterioration is creating an unsafe environment. Clay stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent I detected on Beth's clothes. Here's what's going to happen, he said quietly. You're going to get the help you need. Professional help, and Beth is going to get the space she needs while you work on your issues. What kind of space? The kind that involves lawyers and papers and new living arrangements. Clay's smile never wavered. It's really for the best, Colin, for everyone involved. I stared at him, letting my face show confusion and fear. You mean divorce? I mean resolution. Clean, simple, undisputed. You sign some papers, she gets what she needs to feel safe, everyone moves on with their lives. And if I don't want to sign papers? Clay's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something cold and final. Then we'll have to explore other options. Options that might involve police reports about domestic disturbances, medical evaluations, workplace incidents. The kind of documentation that makes a man's life very complicated. He was outlining his entire plan. Drive me to an apparent breakdown, document everything, use the evidence to force a settlement that left Beth with our assets, and me with nothing. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, take your time, but don't take too much time. Beth's patience isn't unlimited. Clay headed for the garage door, then paused. Oh, and Colin? I'd be careful about discussing our conversation with Beth. She's very fragile right now. Too much pressure might push her to make decisions neither of us wants her to make. Translation: keep your mouth shut or we'll accelerate the timeline. After he left, I sat, shaking with rage. They'd turned my home into a surveillance operation, built a psychological profile to destroy my credibility. Time to prove them wrong. Wednesday morning, I started my counterattack. First, I called in sick to work, something I'd never done in 5 years. When my supervisor asked if everything was okay, I let my voice crack slightly. Just need a few days to get my head straight. Personal stuff? Take all the time you need, Colin. We'll cover the Morrison report. Perfect. I needed them to remember this conversation later. Next, I drove to Clay's apartment complex, not to confront him, to gather intelligence. I parked across the street and used military-grade surveillance equipment to photograph everyone who entered or left the building. By noon, I had images of 3 different women visiting Clay's apartment. All well-dressed, all wearing wedding rings, all looking like they were carrying significant emotional baggage. Clay Gorman wasn't just targeting Beth. He was running multiple operations simultaneously. I followed one of the women, a blonde in her 40s, driving an expensive Mercedes. She led me to an upscale neighborhood where she met with a man in a law office parking lot. Their conversation was brief but intense. The man handed her a folder. She handed him an envelope. When they parted, she was crying. I photographed the license plates, the law office sign, the entire exchange. That afternoon, I visited my lawyer, Patricia Vance, who specialized in complex divorces. My wife is planning to leave me. She's working with a man who manufactures evidence of mental instability. They've been recording me, manipulating situations. Patricia listened as I laid out everything. This is elaborate and expensive. Your wife must have significant motivation. Our house is worth $400,000. My retirement account has another $200,000. We're talking $750,000. More than enough to justify this manipulation. What do you want to do? I outlined my plan. Patricia listened, occasionally raising eyebrows. It's risky. If this goes wrong, you could face criminal charges. If I do nothing, I lose everything. I'll need documentation for everything. And Colin, from now on, assume every conversation with your wife is being recorded. Thursday evening, Beth came home with flowers and takeout. I thought we could have a nice dinner, she said, setting the table with our good china. Over dinner, Beth was the perfect wife, attentive, caring, supportive. The performance was flawless and completely calculated. Colin, she said over dessert, I've been thinking about you seeing someone. A therapist? I hadn't discussed therapy with her, but clearly she needed me to think I had. Did we talk about that? Tuesday night? You said you were having trouble concentrating, feeling overwhelmed? I stared at her, letting uncertainty show. I don't remember that conversation. That's exactly what I'm talking about. These memory lapses are getting worse. She was gaslighting me, rewriting our shared history. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am losing track of things. Beth pulled out her phone. I already found someone, Dr. Sarah Williams. She specializes in trauma-related cognitive issues. You already researched therapists? I've been worried about you for weeks. After dinner, while Beth showered, I checked her phone. Text conversation with S. Williams? Beth. He agreed to therapy. Can you fit him in tomorrow? S. Williams. 2 p.m. is open. Standard evaluation protocol? Beth. Yes. Memory issues, anger management, possible cognitive decline. Very cooperative, but declining rapidly. They weren't just planning to control the therapy. They were planning to control the therapist. Friday afternoon, I kept the appointment with Dr. Williams. Her office was in a modern building downtown, the kind of place that screamed expensive and professional. Dr. Williams was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s, perfectly groomed, the sort of woman who radiated competence and authority. She welcomed me with a warm smile and gentle manner. Beth tells me you've been having some difficulties lately, she said once we were seated in her consultation room. Some problems with memory, concentration, work stress. How long have you been experiencing these symptoms? A few weeks, maybe longer, it's hard to tell. Time feels blurred lately. Dr. Williams made notes as I spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Her questions were leading, designed to elicit specific responses that would support a predetermined diagnosis. Have you experienced any episodes of anger or aggression? Sometimes I get frustrated, but I've never hurt anyone. Frustration can manifest in different ways. Have you raised your voice, thrown objects, made threats? I might have raised my voice once or twice. When I couldn't find things or when Beth was trying to help and I got confused. How does Beth respond when you raise your voice? She gets scared. I feel terrible about it. Dr. Williams nodded sympathetically. It's good that you recognize the impact of your behavior. That suggests you're ready to work on these issues. The session continued for 45 minutes. By the end, Dr. Williams had extracted exactly the admission she needed. Memory problems, anger issues, recognition that my behavior was frightening to my wife. I'd like to see you twice a week initially, she said as we wrapped up. And I'm going to recommend some cognitive testing to get a baseline for your memory function. Is it serious? Let's focus on getting you the help you need. With proper treatment, many people with your symptoms see significant improvement. I left the office knowing I'd just provided professional documentation for Beth and Clay's case. Dr. Williams's notes would paint me as a mentally unstable veteran whose condition was deteriorating rapidly. But I'd also accomplished something else. I'd established a paper trail of my own. Saturday morning, Beth was gone. Her note said she was visiting her sister for the weekend. I used the time to visit the other women I'd photographed at Clay's apartment. The blonde was named Jessica. I found her at a coffee shop looking exhausted. Excuse me, I think we might have a mutual acquaintance. Clay Gorman? Her reaction was immediate. Fear, anger, recognition. Who are you? Someone in a similar situation, someone who might be able to help. I showed her Clay's business card. He's working with my wife to manufacture evidence that I'm mentally unstable. Jessica stared at the card. You're serious? Dead serious, and I think you might be the key to stopping him. We talked for 2 hours. Jessica's story was almost identical to mine. Manipulated situations, fabricated evidence, a therapist working with Clay. The difference was that Jessica had believed the documentation and agreed to a settlement that left her ex-husband with nothing. He destroyed my marriage and my husband's life, she said, tears in her eyes. And I helped him do it because I thought I was protecting myself. Help me stop him. Help me make sure he can't do this to anyone else. Jessica nodded. What do you need me to do? By Sunday evening, I had statements from Jessica and 2 other women documenting Clay's pattern of marriage fraud. I had financial records showing payments from Beth to Clay's company. I had audio recordings of Clay and Beth discussing their strategy. Most importantly, I had Dr. Williams' professional evaluation, along with evidence that she'd prepared her assessment before ever meeting me. Monday morning, everything was ready. Monday morning, my phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Patricia Vance sounded grim. Colin, we have a situation. Your wife filed for an emergency restraining order. She's claiming you threatened her with violence, showed her a tool. My stomach dropped. That's false. She has recordings to support her claims, audio of you allegedly making threats, discussing tools. They'd edited our conversations, taking fragments out of context. She's also filed for emergency asset protection, claiming you've been liquidating accounts, and immediate possession of the home, saying she fears for her safety. What's the timeline? Hearing this afternoon. 2 o'clock. That afternoon, I sat in family court watching my wife perform the role of terrified victim. Conservative dress, minimal makeup, perfect image of a woman seeking protection. Your Honor, her attorney said, Mrs. Barrett has endured months of increasingly erratic behavior. As a military veteran with specialized training in explosives, Mr. Barrett poses a unique threat. Beth took the stand, voice trembling as she described my alleged deterioration. Memory loss, violent outbursts, threats. She spoke about finding tool manuals, hearing me talk about eliminating problems. Just last week, Beth said, tears streaming, he showed me a combat knife and said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure I'd disappeared like his enemies. Overseas, I'd never owned a combat knife. I'd never served overseas, but the lie sounded convincing. Her performance was flawless. Then Patricia stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Barrett, during this period of your husband's alleged instability, did you document his behavior? I was too frightened. How many recordings did you make? Beth hesitated. Some recordings, yes. More than 10? More than 50? Patricia approached with a thick folder. Evidence shows Mrs. Barrett recorded over 200 hours of conversation in the past month. Does that seem excessive for someone simply protecting herself? I was documenting his decline for his own protection. During this same period, were you romantically involved with Clay Gorman? No. Patricia nodded to the bailiff, who activated a screen. Security footage appeared. Beth and Clay entering his apartment, leaving together, kissing in parking lots. This footage spans 3 months, showing you and Mr. Gorman engaging in intimate contact on 17 occasions. Beth's face went pale. That's not what it looks like. Let's hear what it sounds like. Patricia played audio, Beth and Clay discussing their timeline, joking about my confusion. Clay's voice, the part where he screams about the deadline, is perfect. Beth's voice, he's been losing it for weeks. Yesterday, he put his wallet in the freezer. Clay's voice, perfect. How are you feeling about the timeline? Beth's voice, ready. This marriage has been dead for years. I just needed the right exit strategy. The courtroom fell silent. Your Honor, Patricia continued, Mr. Gorman is not a licensed security consultant. He's a convicted felon who specializes in marriage fraud. Mrs. Barrett has been working with him to manufacture evidence while conducting an extramarital affair. Patricia presented Clay's criminal record, his false business license, his pattern targeting other married women. She played unedited recordings showing Beth and Clay manipulating situations. This knife Mrs. Barrett mentioned, it belongs to Mr. Gorman. It was planted in the home as part of their scheme. These tactical guides, downloaded from Mr. Gorman's computer, the threats she claims to have heard, edited audio clips taken out of context. Patricia called Jessica to the stand. Jessica testified about her experience with Clay's operation, how he'd manipulated her into believing her husband was dangerous, how he'd manufactured evidence. He told me my husband was planning to hurt me, Jessica said, tears in her eyes. He had recordings, documentation, professional evaluations. I thought I was protecting myself. Instead, I was helping him destroy an innocent man. Patricia called Dr. Williams to the stand. Under oath, Dr. AITA. Williams admitted she'd prepared her assessment before our first session, that she'd been paid by Clay Gorman to provide predetermined diagnoses, that she'd never been licensed to practice in our state. This is elaborate conspiracy to defraud Mr. Barrett of his assets while destroying his reputation, Patricia concluded. Mrs. Barrett isn't a victim, she's a perpetrator. The judge listened without expression. When Patricia finished, he turned to Beth. Mrs. Barrett, do you wish to change any part of your testimony? Beth looked at her attorney. Your Honor, I may have been confused about some details. Confused? The judge's voice was ice cold. You've presented fabricated evidence, false testimony, fraudulent claims. You've wasted the court's time on a case designed to commit perjury and theft. I can explain. You'll explain to a grand jury. Bailiff, prepare paperwork for criminal referral on charges of perjury, conspiracy, and attempted fraud. Beth started crying, real tears this time. I want to call Clay, she said desperately. Mr. Gorman was arrested this morning on charges related to 3 other similar cases, the judge said dryly. Patricia had arranged coordinated arrests of both Clay and Dr. Williams as part of a marriage fraud investigation. The restraining order was dismissed. Beth's claims were rejected. Emergency asset protection was reversed. Mrs. Barrett, I'm awarding Mr. Barrett immediate possession of all marital assets pending investigation of your fraudulent activities. You're forbidden from entering the marital home, accessing joint accounts, or contacting your husband except through counsel. Beth collapsed, sobbing. Mr. Barrett, the judge said, I apologize for what you've endured. The court system failed to protect you from this offense. As we left, Patricia said, How do you feel? Like a building that was rigged to collapse but had better engineering than the demolition team expected. As we walked to the parking garage, a woman in a navy blazer blocked our path. One of Beth's closest friends from the office, her self-appointed defender. You destroyed her, she spat. She was scared. You know what kind of man you are. Trained, dangerous, silent. You could have broken her. You probably did in ways no one could see. Patricia stepped half a pace forward. You were in court. You heard the evidence. Beth fabricated everything. She made one mistake, the woman snapped. She was trying to escape a life that drained her. You think that deserves jail? No one deserves what you did to her. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said quietly, but clearly, she didn't make a mistake. She made a plan. She hired a con artist, planted evidence, recorded me without consent, lied under oath. That's not fear. That's a crime. The woman wavered, just a flicker in her eyes. Patricia added coldly, if you still think she's the victim, help her hire a defense attorney. She'll need one. We left the woman standing there, fuming. Not because she was right, but because she'd been wrong and couldn't admit it. 3 weeks later, Beth pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud charges. 18 months, suspended to 6 months, with probation, ordered to pay full restitution. Clay Gorman received 5 years in federal prison for marriage fraud across multiple states. The FBI connected him to at least 12 similar cases, with damages totaling over $3 million. Dr. Williams lost her license and faced separate criminal charges for practicing without proper credentials. I kept the house, retirement accounts, everything we'd built. Beth kept the criminal record and knowledge that her attempt to destroy me had destroyed her instead. A few weeks after the trial, I received a letter from Jessica. She'd hired Patricia to file suit seeking reversal of her settlement based on fraudulent evidence. She won, recovering most of what she'd lost. Thank you for having the courage to fight back, she wrote. Because you stood up to him, 3 other women have come forward with similar stories. Clay Gorman will never hurt anyone like this again. Epilogue. Controlled demolition. 6 months later, I sold the house and bought a smaller place in the mountains. Quiet neighborhood, good neighbors, the kind of place where people respect privacy. My nearest neighbor, an old rancher named Frank, stopped by while I was working in my garden. You're the fellow who had trouble with his wife, aren't you? He said. News travels fast in small towns. Folks say she tried to frame you for being crazy, steal your house, got herself arrested instead. That true? Close enough. How'd you stay so calm through all that? Most men would have lost their minds for real. I set down my shovel, looked at the mountains. I spent 8 years disarming explosives for the army. You learn to stay steady when something's designed to blow up in your face. And sometimes the best way to deal with a bomb is to let the people who built it make a mistake with the wiring. Frank nodded slowly. What are you going to do now? Build something better, something that can't be torn down. The truth is, I'd learned something important. I wasn't losing my edge. I was sharpening it. Beth thought she could control the demolition of our marriage. She thought she could predict how the pieces would fall. She forgot that the most dangerous person in any demolition is the one who understands exactly how things are supposed to break and what happens when they don't.